Good morning, time travelers. Hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. You know, in our exploration of the concept of our time traveling, right? Essentially living out our lives with reference to the past and the possibility of the future, we can kind of test ourselves and we can I wouldn't say play a game, but we could kind of play a game, right? Imagine you're from the year 3050, right? You're from the year 3050 and you decided, you know what, I'm going to go, I've read about what happened, during this era of time. I'm going to get in my time machine and I'm going to go back and I'm going to check it out, right? And see what that's all about and everything else. First of all, the game really isn't the second part. Go get in your time machine and come back to now. We're already in now, right? So no mystery to you there, right? But when I said, imagine you are from the year 3050, what is your needle? Where does your needle of thought go, right? Does your needle of thought go to, oh my gosh, it's going to be awful because of everything and how difficult, some aspects of the world and culture is, are now. It just means that it's going to be, so much worse by then and so on and so forth, right? If your mind's eye picture went to that, right? Hold that. If your mind's eye picture went to, oh wow, the future, it's going to be pretty fantastic, right? We're going to come out of the things that are holding us back, and we're going to be able to overcome ourselves and our behaviors and how we treat one another, and there's going to be a little more love in the world, hopefully a lot more, right? And your mind's eye went immediately to the hope and possibility for the future. Hold that. Now, if I said that, imagine you go to, you're from the year 3050 and your mind said, things basically don't really change much. There are advancements and we're still going to always be trying to overcome ourselves in one state or another, right? So your mind went automatically to, yeah, it'll be different, but not better, not worse, just different. Hold that, because it's in the exercise of just thinking, hey, I'm from the year 3050 and my perspective on that. And you get essentially to, it boils down to the glass is half full, the glass is half empty. There isn't really a glass, right? Uh, right. So it's about our attitude. So if you think about it, if we're manifesting the future in the now, right, as time travelers, what would be the point of coming back to now? Would it just be to observe and be an inquisitive historian or archaeologist or you know and to or anthropologist and just study culture and so forth? Would it be just for your own entertainment and education, or would there be a greater purpose? Would it be, let's play the game of, it's really not changed much, right? We had a lot of advancements, but we're still trying to overcome ourselves, right? Would it be with purpose that we came back and said, you know what, let's see if we can't, drop a little nuggets of gold along the path, plant some trees along this journey of where these folks are now, so that they can see things blossom and bloom and improve and to find value and leaps, not steps, but leaps, right? Forward in progress, right? A lot of times when we think of progress, we think, well, we need to have more systems, more controls. We need an organized system to function. I mean, I think we've figured that out. It doesn't matter really what your philosophy, your background, your religion, it doesn't matter. Everything lives within a system, right? The beautiful thing about it is we get to design our system as we go. But the difficulty and the challenge we have to overcome is designing a system, right, that provides for what? Safety, security, all of the base functions of what a society needs without allowing anything to impose upon safety and security. But if you look at where we are now in culture, you see this all the time, right? You see the fleecing of the consumer. You see, uh, cultures being overwrought with regulations and controls that are really non-value added, right? They're not adding value. They're really, much of them aren't even providing more safety nor security, right? Some of it is preventing some from overrunning others, and that's a good thing. But we have to be careful with that too, right? Because overreach is possible in any aspect of life. If we allow overreach in one area, we're more than likely going to allow overreach in another area. If we're not going to do due diligence, right, to dig into something that's important over here, then we're probably not going to do the due diligence to dig into important things over there, right? Wherever we're talking, whatever we're talking about, it's about the due diligence. Are we going to do the, provide the due diligence to the things that we hold and we value in culture, right? And as time travelers, if you imagined that you came back, essentially things don't really change, haven't really changed much, you would probably be motivated to say, hey, well, how about we try to introduce some things, right? We try to introduce some things and we try to, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't look into the future and say, oh, this is what exactly it looks like in the future, right? We can kind of imagine, we can, the algorithms within us can put together a version of what the future looks like, right? If you get onto any of the AI software now, you can give it some parameters to extrapolate forward, and it'll give you an image of what the future looks like, right? And you could probably do this as well with the concept of, well, things are going to improve. Things essentially don't change, by and large much, or things are much worse. And the AI can factor all of that in as well, right? Just like we do. And we do this within ourselves and within our own mind's eye. We can imagine what these outcomes can be. The challenge is actual, because we are actually time travelers. We are in the now, traveling into the moments of the future, and so on and so forth, until eventually, while we're always in the now, there is what we did yesterday and the day before and the week before that, and what we're going to do tomorrow and the week, later and month and so on, right? So we can, and the algorithms within us, right, within our DNA and in our mind, we can look and see what that looks like. But we can also, depending on our attitude and our behavior, right? Because these things are essential features of how culture develops and grows. We can essentially say, okay, if my attitude toward the future is that it's going to be, bleak, well, then what do you think you're going to manifest on in your daily life, right? What do you think you're going to do? How do you think you're going to live? I'm not saying this is absolutely true, but we have to ask the question, are we going to live more carelessly? Hey, as long as I get mine kind of an attitude, as long as I'm taken care of, everybody else who cares about them, right? Is it a selfish perspective, right? In the extreme. But then in varying degrees, pulling back from that, are we also subtly creating a self-fulfilling prophecy essentially by saying, well, the future is going to be bleak, and because we believe it's going to be bleak, under the undertow is that we work toward that. We live in a surface level of optimism, while underneath it all, we're pessimistic, we're divisive, we're separating people, we're putting people in boxes, we're essentially dividing and subdividing culture, and there isn't really ever a uniting. It becomes forever a thing that is never attained. But in the process, what do we put in there? In that lack of attainment, what do we put in there? Well, how can I get mine? right? So now it becomes a negative, we'll say a negative attitude, right? In the extreme, a negative pessimistic attitude now doesn't care if I get mine, doesn't care about the now or what happens to others and how I affect people around me, because it's all about me. And the future's, going to be not one way or the other anyway, not my problem, right? We can we can pull ourselves out of responsibility in the now as actual time travelers and say, I'm not going to be responsible for the future, right? Now, this isn't to say we need to regulate every bloody thing out there. It just means that we have to ask ourselves these questions because our behavior matters, right? Our words and our thoughts do matter, right? And we can make mistakes, and we should be able to learn and grow out of those mistakes. But all that being said is, what is your daily operating mode? Is your daily operating mode one of undertow of pessimism, of that the future is going to be bleak and not so great? And are we living down to that, right? Are we living our lives down to that? So essentially saying, well, it's going to be bleak in the future anyway. I may as well just party my life away, right? And celebrate all you must, but to do anything in excess, right, is essentially a form of gluttony, right? And that gluttony consumes us. Doesn't matter what we're talking about, what topic, it just does. It folds in on itself until our lives are hampered, and then we what? Pollute generations going forward with our what? Pessimism, negativity. I've had family members when I was up and coming were very negative, very pessimistic, very oh those people, so whether it be politics or people in culture, just life and jobs and all that kind of stuff, and always in kind of this low hum of pessimism. And I always thought, where's this coming from, right? And some of it's, there's probably a fear based element to it, but I think it's probably overwhelm, to be honest with you. I think that if you struggled in life, or generations of your families and your friends and your culture have struggled, right? And we have to have some empathy here too, have struggled, then what happens is there becomes a bitterness sets in, a jadedness sets in, right? To where anyone who's living an okay life and has a modicum amount of peace and joy in their life now becomes a foe, or becomes someone to be derided, or that sort of thing. And so you get this low hum of pessimism. I mean, I've lived in towns where I've seen this, and even in my hometown I see it. You can't unsee it. You can't unsee the tone. You can't unsee the language. You can't unsee the perspective. You can't unsee the lack of care for the elderly and others. You can't unsee it once you've seen it. Once you've seen it, you know what it is. And most of us have seen it. We've seen these undertones of pessimism and negativity playing themselves out in this kind of woe is me, or, what kind of the Eeyore. This is fun. So that would be on the negative end, right? On the neutral end, you might think, well, hey, uh, not a whole lot changed, not a whole lot was different. I'll go back and uh, maybe I can, similarly, we can make some changes. We can do some things. We can improve some things, and it may not completely, it would be foolish to think that a utopia is possible in the 3D, but we could probably make ourselves pretty doggone good. I mean, if you look at organizational culture, right, and you look at the output and the effectiveness, the AI is telling us that we're not better than 30 some percent effective, right? Even though we should say colorful reporting in the US anyway shows us at 71% effectiveness, right? Still not passing grade, right? Still an F in school, okay? Right? But the AI is saying, well, I got news for you. You're not even doing half that good. And here's why. All the little isms and the hidden costs and all the little games and the playing with the rules, right? So When you look at that and you say, okay, we could come back. We've got plenty of room to improve. We got plenty of room to improve how we treat one another, with our behavior, whether it be our attitude, right? And if you come back and you see and you have perspective and and you've learned, right? Because you're from the future, so of course this would be historic, right? That that it's essentially the negativity, pessimism, and I'll say anger and frustration and all the things that are shaping and have shaped the future, then you would want to come back because you would understand that attitude and all of that is and behavior is the primary catalyst for the outcome of where the future goes, right? And now your self-fulfilling prophecy, you take responsibility for the future, right? You take responsibility for whether there is more, kindness, love, respect, integrity, accountability, all these things, right? All the really the good behaviors. You take accountability for that. Now your approach is different. Your approach to living is different. Your approach is, oh, now that I understand where some of that pessimism and all that stuff is coming from, let's just bring that out into the open, put some sunlight on it and say, yeah, that was yesterday and that was true and that was hard and that was difficult. But we all have to let it go, right? Just like any relationship, right? If you've been in relationships, it doesn't matter if they were interpersonal or significant other or whatever, there it may be a reason, a season, or a lifetime, right? But that does if it's not a lifetime, does that mean you burn the bridge down to that human connection? Does that mean that you toss people in the burn pile, right? Are you judging them and going, oh, these people, right? Now you may have to set up boundaries if there's toxicity there, right? But it doesn't mean that you can't understand that folks are essentially they're dealing with a certain level of brokenness and they need time and space and to be in their own bubble, and to deal with what they need to deal with. And if it's about encouragement, provide it when you can, right? But but it's our approach. Is are we throwing the glass away, right? Forget half full or half empty. Are we throwing the glass away? So as a time traveler, you might see it as an opportunity, right, to come back and to make change. And with that in mind, obviously, if you have a great perspective and the future is super bright and everything else, maybe you went back just short of the other two. Who would make for the best improvement? Probably the people that saw that was neutral or it wasn't so great. They would probably come back and want it to be better, right? The person who, if everything was fabulous and fantastic and just, then those people probably fell short, right? They fell short of the time. They didn't come back to now. They came back to like maybe 50 years from now or 5 or 10 years from now or something like that. After the other two had already come back and done some work, right? And started to ignite some things. Now we can take that fun little perspective and that lesson or that exercise, and we can apply it to us right now and say we don't have to live our lives with the unknown possibility of what the future is going to be. We can create the future right now. You're creating it as a time traveler right now in every moment. Every decision you make is twisting and turning that river of time. And that river of time, whether it goes over into a beautiful waterfall or gets, crashes into something or, all the things, whatever, probably not the greatest analogy, but the river of time, you get to twist and turn it so that it has the best outcome, right, for the future. That's essentially what we're trying to do. We're trying to get that water into a good place and create a nice, beautiful lake, right? Let's just say. So you have the power within you right now to make a difference. You have the power within you to achieve the possible. Does that mean that the possible is going to be had today? Does that mean that we have our expectation that it's going to be great 24 hours from now? No. It's like a sheet of paper in a big thick phone book that nobody ever uses anymore. But it's like a sheet of that really thin phone book paper. It's a sheet. And it's a constancy over time, folks. It's a constancy as we go forward. But if just some folks are doing it, then we're going to have some impact. If we have many folks, right, manifesting the future by how they behave toward one another now, then we what? We shape and sculpt the future in a more positive, right, way. Now, this also introduces something else, and I don't want this video to be super long, but is this notion that when we go through struggles, that that's bad. No, folks. If you're going through struggle, that probably means that is something that needs to be worked on and repaired and healed and cleaned up, right? so but what happens is we can see that as like, oh my gosh, and then what? We get to make a choice as time travelers now. How do I perceive that? Do I perceive that as an opportunity? Or do I perceive that as well, that's just the way it is around here, or things are negative. Now, this happens in organizations all over the place. I've seen it firsthand. And attitude, right? Attitude is telling you what, folks, attitude is the gold thread around everything. If you have a bad attitude, you're going to have a bad outcome. That's just a flat fact. If you have a good attitude, you're going to have a better outcome. Not perfect outcome. You're going to have a better outcome, right? So see, struggle, strife, constraints, all these things as opportunity as a time traveler. And don't let, obviously, when I say don't let, you might have that initial thought, right, of irritation, right? That's fine. Just a little self-talk, okay? Yeah, that's irritating, but I know why it is. And boom, let it go, right? You're dealing with it in the moment. And this, you can apply this to anything in your life, to be honest with you. This doesn't have to be something, at large in culture. It could be a simple task that is really messed up, that really drives you crazy, or a process is really, really terrible, or legislation, or regulations, or all these things. Step back. I could sit here and rail. I could go on social media and rail about how bad it is, or what? I could go try to make a difference and change it, or pull on it, or show and demonstrate how it's not useful in every situation. Therefore, it isn't really valid, and we need to change it, eliminate it, or whatever, and make a cogent argument, a dispassionate, cogent argument. But if we get into this, people who believe this are bad, right? Then we've already started behind the curve, folks. We can't really overcome a bad attitude, right? We can't overcome a negative attitude within ourselves. And we can't expect a better system, whatever that system ends up becoming overall, again, if our attitude and our behavior is off kilter, right? You have a road, and then you make a 3-foot diversion off that road, and as you go far enough, you're lost in the woods, folks, and you don't know where the road is. I mean, you have an idea, but you don't know. That road could have doubled back, right? And you could be lost in the woods. And this actually happens to people, right? So similarly, if we let our attitude drag us off course, right, as time travelers, we have to be cognizant of the fact that it's very important on a day-to-day basis to guard our attitudes and our behaviors, and guard ourselves from, judging folks to the nth degree and creating divisiveness and division. Because when we do that, we're just putting a limiter switch on our possibility of growth, right? I can't, if I put a box over a plant, it doesn't get sunlight. And then what happens? It dies, right? It dies. It just straight up dies. This is no different. That box over that plant, that's you judging another person. That's you judging the system. Now, if you come across a box that's over a plant, and for some reason, don't ask me why, you couldn't get that box off, you're going to go, oh, okay, how can I, change this to where I can get some sunlight in there, and then over time, maybe eventually, there's no box, right? But in the short term, how do I fix this? How do we make improvement, right? And get more sunlight on a situation, get more sunlight to improve what we're trying to improve. Then as time rolls forward, right? And this is what legacy is all about, folks. If if you're talking about, hey, what is legacy? Well, the outcome of your legacy won't be known until the future. It may be 100 years from now, and people are going to say, oh, I remember great whoever, and you know, this happened and that happened and this, and they told me this and this, and you know, and oh wow, that's super cool and helpful or whatever. There's nuggets of your life that you're leaving behind all the time. Now, let me ask you this. Are these nuggets ones you're creating out of hope for the future? Or are they nuggets you're creating out of pessimism, right? The glass is half empty or not full at all, right? Because ultimately we can't count on the fact that somebody is going to be coming from 30, 50, right? To plop themselves in here and say, hey, this is what I saw. Wasn't so great. We need to fix this, right? Or, hey, this is where I'm coming from. It was, oh my gosh, awful. We need to do a revamp. You know, whatever the case may be, we don't have that luxury, right? We don't have the luxury of somebody coming from 30, 50. So we have to become the stewards of time, right? As time travelers, we're stewards of time. So we have to live our lives as good stewards of time because we literally have it in our hands. All right, folks, that's going to be it for today. Remember, hit that good green domino 3 to 5 times a day to uplift, motivate, inspire, just encourage one another. And when we do that, what we find is culture begins to improve and change, and we change our own lives as well in the process. And that's great. But also, we can't change anything on the outside. We can't transform anything on the outside if we aren't willing to transform on the inside. And that's very important to remember. All right, folks, have a fantastic day. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.